The biggest ever Tim Vine joke book. Over 1,000 fantastic gags. No matter what your age, hugely popular, continuously funny, and utterly unique. The Guardian. Frozen apples. They're hardcore. Black Beauty. He's a dark horse. I refuse to work in a coal mine. It's beneath me. Velcro, what a rip-off. This jellyfish walked into a shop. I thought, he's a slippery customer. I was playing tennis with a napkin. I said, hey, don't serviette. I fell in love with a clumsy cleaner. She swept me off my feet. ... And loads more original jokes and illustrations. Page 1. The biggest ever Tim Vine joke book. Tim Vine is a comedian. He was born in Cheam. He's a big fan of broccoli and darts and karaoke. By Century London Publishers. Published by Century 2010. Copyright Tim Vine 2010. It says, for my family, my friends, and all of my fan. Introduction. So this bloke rang me up. He said, I'm calling from Random House. I said, can you be a bit more specific? That's the first joke. He said, would you like to create a joke book filled entirely with your gags? I said, as long as I don't have to pull the cover on myself, because that would be a bit of a bind. That's the second joke, but I might be losing you. He said, what do you know about books? I said, only what I've read. Is the way he types them. He said, fill the book with nonsense. I said, that's my middle name. Phil. The result of that first exchange is in your hands. Jokes I wrote for my stand-up act. Jokes from some of my old Edinburgh shows and tours. Jokes I wrote in little notebooks that I stashed in the cupboard under the stairs and thought would never see the light of day. Jokes I wrote with my mate John Archer. Just lots of my jokes. And I've also scribbled some in cartoon form. I hope you laugh. The advantage of a book, of course, is that I won't hear the heckles. Tim Vine 2010. Tim Vine jokes. 1 to 100. This bloke said to me, he said, I once got my dog to retrieve a stick from 100 miles away. I said, that's a bit far-fetched. I don't like my hands. I always keep them at arm's length. This reporter said to me, he said, how would you describe the absence of Halley's flaming meteorite? I said, no comment. I'm amazed how many people go to Ascot when it's windy. Still, hats off to them. Me and my brother inherited some furniture from the local zoo. I'm glad to say I got the lion's share. Whenever I'm in Italy, I became a rickety old table. I guess I'm just a hopeless romantique. My granddad was a film actor a very long time ago. He was the star of the bronze screen. ... dash dash dash. I really regret that. Remorse code. After I've had an argument, I sometimes hold a hoover over my head. It helps clear the air. The other day I sat on a hairdryer. That put the wind up me. So I was lying in a bath of meths, and my girlfriend rang up and she was lying in a bath of paraffin. I said, I'm with you in spirit. I've got a friend who's a very tall blade of grass. He's easily swayed. This bloke said to me, he said, I bet you can't name a famous Egyptian landmark. I said, that's what you thinks. My dog's bark is worse than his bite because he hasn't got any teeth, and when he barks, people's ears explode. I saw a 20-foot parrot the other day. You could knock me down with a feather. I was adopted by a sports car. He took me under his wing mirror. I was skiing through Tyrak and I fell down an 80-foot cravat. I was skiing through Tyrak and I fell down an 80-foot cravat. So I saw this bloke who was a cross between an ostrich and a serial killer. He was always burying other people's heads in the sand. The other day I tied my head to a dog's tail. I just fancied a bit of a chin wag. So I saw this bloke with a 1.2 litre engine halfway down his arm. I said, "More power to your elbow." Conjunctivitis.com. That's a sight for sore eyes. I was watching a horror film and my skin peeled off my body and started tiptoeing around the house. I thought, this film is making my skin creep. I've got a friend who's a psychopath and he's got a brilliant sense of humour. He kills me. So this bloke pulled a vital organ out of my chest and chucked it into a pond. My heart sank. This bloke said to me, he said, "Why are you shouting into the air conditioning?" I said, "I'm venting my feelings." I saw this extinct bird with a hunchback. It was a quasidodo. I've started displaying some of my clothes and possessions and photographs of me. I've made an exhibition of myself. I didn't have a happy upbringing. I remember my 3rd birthday party. I was 15. The Second World War was no picnic because they couldn't find a big enough blanket. So I went to the petrol station. I said, "Fill her up." And when I came back, he was stuffing my wife's face with cream cakes. This turkey challenged me to a fight. He threw down the giblet. I saw this angry Veruca. I saw this angry Veruca. He was on the warpath. So I went on a date, and all we talked about was wooden leg extensions. The conversation was stilted. I'm looking for a house at the moment. It's my house. I've forgotten where I live. I spent the whole of today pruning. I was just chucking prunes at people. My girlfriend is covered from head to toe in grass. Her name's Lorna. Me and my mum don't get on. We never argue, but if a bus stops in front of us, we don't get on. My uncle's mad because he wears a wiggly jacket. My uncle's mad because he wears a wiggly jacket, whereas my auntie, she wears a straitjacket. I entered a competition putting sails on boats. It was rigged. So I went down the local hotel and I said, "Can you put me up?" And he nailed me to the ceiling. I've got a friend who puts plaster of Paris on my face, waits for it to dry, and then hits it with a chisel. He cracks me up. Ground sheets, they don't get much coverage. I've got a gun made out of a dozen pigs. It's a 12-bore. This bloke said to me, he said, "Why have you got manure on your head?" I said, "I've just had my hair done." What has lots of legs and a machine gun? A caterpillar. I saw a coconut-flavoured biscuit playing football. It was Wayne Macaroni. So I went to the chemist's. I said, "Give me some rat poison." She said, "I'm sorry, sir, but we only sell things to unblock your nose." I said, "I know that, but I've got a rat up my nose." This bloke said to me, he said, "I live in the sky with a Swiss clock." I said, "You're in cloud cuckoo land." I once tried to hang myself with a clip-on tie. Broke both my legs. I used to file my nails, but then I thought, What's the point of keeping them? Exit signs. They're on the way out. Black Beauty. He's a dark horse. I've got a sponge front door. Hey, don't knock it. I've got a sponge front door. Hey, don't knock it. I never sleep with fish. I'm halibut. I used to go out with a mackerel, and when we split up, she was very upset. I said, there's plenty more men on the earth. I'm being stalked by a sumo wrestler. I've got a big following. I was driving here and a policeman stopped me because one of my tyres was a bit flat. Luckily, I had a foot pump in the boot, so I knocked him out with that and drove off. I was working in a garage and little Bo Peep walked in. She said, there's smoke coming out of my bonnet. I said, your hair's on fire. When I drive, my car eggs shoot out the boot. It's a hatchback. I'm colourblind, but it doesn't stop me enjoying life. The other night I saw Joseph and his amazing brown coat. It was great. I was working in a health food shop and this bloke walked in. He said, evening Primrose Oil. I said, Mr. Vine, to you. He said, soya chunks? I said, you shouldn't have been looking. He said, cellulite? I said, how much do you want for it? He said, would you like some Alpen? I said, I suppose you think that's a muesli. So I got a job at Burger King and Andrew Lloyd Webber walked in. He said, give me 2 Whoppers. I said, you're good looking and your musicals are great. Batman walked up to me, smashed a vase over my head and said, "Tapow!" I said, "Don't you mean kapow?" He said, "No, I've got China in my hand." You invented Tipex. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I was in this restaurant, and during the starter, the waiter came over, tapped me on the head with his little finger, and then walked off. Then, during the main course, he got his index finger and applied gentle pressure to my shoulder. And then, while I was having dessert, he brushed my ear lightly with his thumb. That's the difference between a good restaurant and a great restaurant. It's the little touches. So I said to the waiter, I said, "Give me something herby." So he gave me a Volkswagen Beetle with no driver. So I was in the jungle and I saw this monkey with a tin opener. I said, "You don't need a tin opener to peel a banana." He said, "I know. This is for the custard." This rabbit walked up to me. He said, "Somebody's just chopped off one of my feet." I said, "That's lucky, isn't it?" Yeah. He said, "I'm a male rabbit and I'm not moving." And I said, "Oh, I see. The buck stops here." He said, "You looking at me?" It was a rabbit Nero. So I looked round and there was a partridge, a grouse and a pheasant, all dressed as clowns. Game for a laugh. I'll tell you what makes my blood boil. Crematoriums. I've always been very lazy. I've got a smoke alarm that's got a snooze button. I was going to write my will today, but then I thought, life's too short. I saw one of those motorbikes with the roof that goes right over the top. I couldn't believe it. I thought somebody had hot-wired a photo booth. I was working in a travel agent's and this bloke walked in. He said, "I want to book a flight, very short notice." I said, "You just missed it." He said, "I want to go somewhere hot and secluded." So I locked him in the photocopy room. Today I went shoplifting while balanced on the shoulders of a group of vampires. I was done for theft on 4 counts. People with guns who say, "Give me your money," you've got to hand it to them. I was a terrible builder. When the foreman said to me, "Have you got a plumb line?" I said, "The one I usually use is..." Have you got a plumb? So I went to my GP and said, "I feel like I've been hit on the head by a set of bongos." He said, "You've probably got slight percussion." He said, "You're turning into an airport." I said, "Is it terminal?" He said, "Antiseptic?" I said, "I've got nothing against the Jews." Do you ever get that when you're halfway through eating a horse and you think to yourself, "I'm not as hungry as I thought I was"? I've got a horse called Treacle. He's got gold stirrups. Golden stirrups. He doesn't go out much. He's a shire horse. That's 3 horse jokes on the trot. 4. So I went to the hair salon and my dad's sister came in spinning round in circles. I thought, oh my giddy aunt. So I said to this bloke, I said, "I'm going to Buckingham Palace to do Prince Philip's hair." He said, "Have you got a permit?" I said, "No, I've just got to take a bit off the back." I said, "Do you like my shirt? It's covered in pictures of cactuses." He said, "Cacti?" I said, "Never mind the tie, what do you think of the shirt?" So I was playing the piano in a bar and an elephant walked in. As I was playing, he started crying his eyes out. I said, "Do you recognise the tune?" He said, "No, I recognise the ivory." I went to the head office of the RSPCA today. It's absolutely tiny. You couldn't swing a cat in there. Today I had dinner with my boss and his wife, and it was a complete disaster. My boss's wife said to me, "How many potatoes would you like?" I said, "I'll just have one." She said, "It's all right, you don't have to be polite." I said, "All right then, I'll just have one, you stupid cow." So I went down the local department store. I said, "Have you got any more net curtains?" He said, "No, they've all got VAT on them." I said, "That's gross." I said, "I can't decide whether to buy this bed or not." He said, "Do you want to sleep on it?" I said, "Of course I do." I said, "How much is it?" He said, $98.99. I said, "Make your mind up." I'm against the arms race. It's bad for your elbows. Jokes 101 to 200. Tim Vine jokes. This bloke said to me, he said, "Do you have any strong political views?" I said, "No, I don't, you capitalist Europhobe." I rang up pest control. I said, "Vermin?" He said, "No, he just left." I threw a stick in the sea, and a round floating object brought it back to me. I said, "There's a good boy." Then a bag of cement went past at 100 miles an hour. I thought, that's quicksand. Did you know the word receding is 400 years old? And that's going back a bit. I used to work for King Midas, but he gave me the golden handshake. So I went to the doctors. I said, "I've got Irish voices coming out of my tummy." He said, "You've got a stomach ulcer." I said, "Why have I got crow's feet on the side of my eyes?" He said, "There's a crow sitting on your forehead." My ankle keeps falling off and it doesn't cost anything to find me attractive. Footloose and fancy-free. I spent the last 2 weeks sitting on a large, hard book. It was my annual holiday. So I went to the pants shop. I said, my name is Frantz, and I want to put some pants on my head. He said, why Frantz? I said, none of your business. I said, I want to see some underwear. He said, it's under there. I said, underwear? He said, I heard you the first time. My mum's into role reversal. She puts the ham on the outside. Someone said to me that lemons were very sharp, so I tried using one to carve a turkey. So I said to this policeman, I said, you look like a tube of Evo stick. He arrested me for solvent abuse. So I went to the opticians. He said, how many fingers am I holding up? I said, 17,251. He said, wrong. 3. But I tell you what, you can't half count quick. I did some cross-dressing this morning. I said, where are my flipping socks? I saw these 2 citrus fruits having a fight. It was a Satsuma wrestling. I saw these 2 citrus fruits having a fight. It was Satsuma wrestling. This woman said to me, she said, I've got designs on you. Then she showed me a diagram of my spleen. I used to be a teddy boy. I had 2 furry ears either side of my head. The other day, someone burnt the bottom of my shoes. It was soul-destroying. My Christmas decorations are inflatable. I'm forever blowing baubles. I refuse to work in a coal mine. It's beneath me. I met a fox who was brilliant at football. It was Brazil Bush. I met a fox who was brilliant at football. It was Brazil Brush. I've just been on a crash diet. I drove my car into a tree and spent a month on a drip. This bloke said to me, he said, I'm going to sell 2 flats. I thought, ooh, premises. I thought Tom Cruise was a boating holiday for male cats. Actually, my name isn't Tim Vine, it's Timbuktu. Sorry, I was miles away. I went to a posh party and everyone was drinking and knitting. I got pins and needles. I'm on a seabed diet. If I see a bed, I eat it. Frozen apples, they're hardcore. Whenever I wash up, I get covered in soapy butter. I can't say that. Okay, bubbles. Whenever I wash up, I get covered in soapy bubbles. It's Sud's Law. My local village was destroyed by toilet paper. Everyone was wiped out. So I was in the party shop with my granny. She said, this kaleidoscope's rubbish. I said, that's a balloon pump. So I saw this dolphin serial killer. It was Jack the Flipper. So I was on this train. I said, I don't think much of this bunk bed. He said, that's the luggage rack. This bloke said to me, he said, do you ever talk off the top of your head? I said, no, halfway down at the front. I went on holiday with my horse. It was self-cantering. So I said to this bloke, I said, when I was on holiday, I stayed in a bed and breakfast. He said, half bored? I said, no, I was totally bored. I was a rubbish church window cleaner. I got rid of all of the stains. This bloke said to me, he said, shall we talk about diaries? I said, let's. So I said to this bloke, I said, can you take my pulse? And he ran off with my lentils. So I went to the National History Museum. I said, have you got the bones of Diplodocus? He said, no, I'm just wearing new shoes. So I said to this bloke, I said, I'm going to North Africa. He said, Tanzania? I said, if I don't wear a hat, it'll tan both of them. This bloke said to me, he said, you look like a medieval string instrument. I said, "Are you calling me a liar?" In 2002, the Queen had been on the throne for 50 years. Would you believe it? Oh. Would you believe it? Oh. In 2002, the Queen had been on the throne for 50 years. Would you believe it? This bloke said to me, he said, "Are you a high flyer?" I said, "No, I tend to hand out flyers at waist level." I went to the haberdashery. I was looking for a cheap frill. I went down the local opticians. I said, "Have you got a contact lens solution?" He said, "What about laser surgery?" This bloke said to me, he said, "I'm the brother of River Phoenix." I said, "You must be joking." I fell in love with a clumsy cleaner. She swept me off my feet. Have you seen that great cricketing cook, Chef Boycott? I went to school with a boy who had a concrete bum. When he got the cane, the teacher hit rock bottom. I see the number of people doing the high jump has leapt up. So I said to a friend of mine, I said, "How come your sofa is covered in burnt patches?" He said, "My dog's been molten." Did you know 30% of car accidents in Sweden involve a moose? I said, "Don't let them drive." Wyoming sounds like Flash Gordon begging for mercy. Apparently 1 in 13 Americans have worked for McDonald's. The other 12 got rejected. The other day, I couldn't decide whether to buy a packet of guitar strings or a box of eggs. It was 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. I can see through your smile because you've got glass teeth. When I was offered a place at the College of Leapfrog, I jumped at the chance. The guitarist of U2 is called The Edge. When he was at school, he was a boarder. What's the secret of comedy about tea? Twinning. What's the secret of comedy about tea? Twining. I went down to my local town hall. I said, "This town is in a mess. What are you going to do about it?" He said, "Nothing." I said, "Why not?" He said, "This is an aerobics class." Curries, wouldn't touch them with a bargee pole. I just got a text from heaven. That was a godsend. I came here on a sheet of sandpaper. It was a bit of a rough ride. This bloke said to me, he said, "Do you think there's life on Mars?" I said, "Well, there's a couple of wasps round the wrapper." Church singers. They're an acquired taste. Last night I had a dream someone was saying, "On your marks, get set, go." I woke up with a start. I met a grumpy American. He was a Missouri guts. So I saw this sad man in a refuse tip. He was down in the dumps. I met a leech who was buying a Valentine's card. He was a sucker for romance. This bloke said to me, he said, "I'm going to be a chimney sweep." I said, "Suit yourself." I saw a bulrush in a library. I thought, well, that looks like a good read. My favourite band is called The Cockles and Muscles. I saw them alive, oh, in concert. So I rang up the fire brigade. I said, "My pet sparrow is stuck up in a tree." He said, "Sparrows are supposed to live in trees." I said, "Not Ian." So I took up rabble farming, but I became a cropper. This bloke kept hitting me with poultry. I got goosebumps. This bloke said to me, he said, "Do you want me to scrape both your knees?" He was a double grazing salesman. No more war. Jigsaw piece, that's a picture. So I said to this bloke, I said, "What do you do for a living?" He said, "I'm a DJ." I said, "Who does the trousers?" Colonic immigration. We've got to flush them out. So I said to Picasso, I said, "Can you explain the out-of-shape faces?" He said, "I think I'm about to sneeze." I went to the doctors. I said, "I feel as though people can't see me clearly." He said, "Maybe you're a bit faint." I had dinner at Uri Geller's house and I got soup all down my front. This judge said to me, he said, "Do you swear to tell the truth?" I said, "No, I do it when I lose my temper." This judge said to me, he said, "Do you swear to tell the truth?" I said, "No, I do it when I lose my temper." So I said to this bloke, I said, "My favourite colour is a bluey green." He said, "Azure?" I said, "I'm certain." Azure. Are you sure? Are you sure? I saw this mallard eating a burger. It was McDonald Duck. My agent said to me, he said, "You've been booked to do a gig in Versailles." I said, "Well, that's the Versailles know how to do it." I said, "Well, that's the Versailles knew about it. That's the first I knew about it. That's Versailles." My agent said to me, he said, "You've been booked to do a gig in Versailles." I said, "Well, that's the Versailles I knew about it." Whenever I have a fight with somebody, I take a photo of it and put it in an album. It's my scrapbook. I bought a double waterbed off Moses. Well, actually it was two singles, but he'd pushed them together. A friend of mine is graduated rod. My friend of mine is a graduated rod for measuring oil. What a dipstick. I'll tell you what often gets overlooked. Garden fences. I've got a friend who used to hit fungus with a massive hammer. He really broke the mould. Asthma. What a wheeze. I know a woman who looks like a washing line. What's her name? Peggy. I'm studying ceramics at the moment. It's driving me potty. I went to a Hells Angels 40th. We sang "Happy Birthday to You." Circus lions. They never get a fair crack of the whip. So I was at home today, leaning over the saucepan, stirring the food with my head. My dad walked in. He said, "You'll never get married if you act like that." I said, "I know. I'll always be a spatula." Tim Vine jokes 201 to 300s. I went down the local fairground. I said, "Coconut shy?" He said, "Put it like this. They don't get out much." I said, "Have you got a Big Dipper?" He said, "Don't be cheeky." So I went to the tarot card reader. I said, "It's my birthday today. Can you tell me what the cards say?" She said, "Sure. To Tim. Happy birthday. Love from Granny." The roller coaster was stuck upside down, and all these people were hanging upside down with their hat standing on end. So I shouted up at them, You lot look really silly with your hair standing on end. Then it came round again, and they were all Mohicans, and they beat me up. I had a go on one of those stools where you shoot a duck over and you get a prize. I noticed if you aim the gun at the guy running the stool, you get all the prizes. I left the fairground and I was beaten up by a local gang called the Hokey Cokey Gang, and they all held hands and surrounded me. Then they put the left leg in and the left leg out, and they went in, out, and they shook me all about. And every time I went, ooh, they went, the hokey cokey, and I thought, so that's what it's all about. I've been living with a woman for some time. She's quite a bit older than me, and we don't get on. It's my mum. She said, I'm going to dig a hole in the ground and fill it with water. I thought, she means well. I said, I'm going to buy a theatre. She said, are you having me on? I said, I'll give you an audition, but I can't promise. There, she fell on the floor, so I rang up the hospital. I said, my mum's collapsed. He said, do you want a stretcher? I said, that'll make her feel worse. He said, what happened? I said, a row of books fell off the wall and landed on her head. He said, you've only got yourself to blame. I remember the first thing my mum said when I was born. She said, I was expecting you. When I left home, she said, don't forget to write. I thought, it's a bit unlikely. It's a basic skill. So I said to this bloke, I said, I just got a job in a bowling alley. He said, 10 pin? I said, no, it's a permanent job. My dad's liver is inside his left knee. His kidneys are on his elbows, and his spleen is on the side of his head. Still, his heart's in the right place. My father is a soldier. He's not a real soldier. He's a thin strip of buttered toast. The unluckiest person in my family is my uncle. 2 weeks after he went blind, his guide dog went deaf. I went to school with a bloke who had 2 arms, 2 legs, but no head. It was very strange when he did cartwheels because you could never tell when he'd finished. So this cowboy walked into a German car showroom. He said, Audi? Audi. So this cowboy walked into a German car showroom. He said, Audi. I went to Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, I can't stop gambling. He said, you want Gamblers Anonymous? I said, you're probably right. I'm so drunk I just don't know where I am. So I went to the doctors. He said, you've got hypochondria. I said, not that as well. I said, doctor, I just swallowed a Robin Reliant. What shall I do? He said, take it easy on corners. I said, doctor, I feel like the whole world is ganging up on me. He said, hold on a minute. Hey lads, he's in here. I went blind recently and I had to go to a Braille optician's. I had to feel these huge Braille letters on the wall and they got smaller and smaller. When I got to the bottom, I said, I can't read that line. He said, I'm sorry, I'm afraid you're going to have to wear gloves. Have you seen that new ventriloquist website? It's on www.got. I don't do jokes about graphic designers. I draw the line at that. I don't do jokes about Spain. No way, Jose. I don't do jokes about an elephant who's packed his trunk and left the circus. Not on your Nelly. And I don't do jokes about the verb to jump out and scare people. That's taboo. I don't do jokes about a wooden step in the corner of the field that doesn't belong to me. That's not my style. I went down the local music shop. I said, "Can you teach me how to read music?" He said, "Why?" I said, "Because I keep pronouncing it music." I said, "I want to buy a violin." He said, "Do you want to buy a bow as well?" I said, "Don't bother wrapping it." I said, "I want something that goes ping." He said, "Ping?" I said, "You'll do." I'm actually a reverse vegetarian. I don't eat leather, but when I go out, I wear corned beef shoes. When I woke up this morning, I threw back my haddock skin duvet, put on my pilchard head slippers, splashed on a bit of cod liver oil aftershave, and drew back the smoked kipper curtains. And I thought to myself, life stinks. This bloke said to me, he said, "What do you think of CFCs?" I said, "You're better off with O-levels." He said, "What do you think about the problems with the ozone?" I said, "It doesn't affect me. I always get a travel card." I got home and the phone was ringing. I picked it up and I said, "Who's speaking, please?" And a voice said, "You are." So I rang up the local swimming baths. I said, "Is that the local swimming baths?" He said, "It depends where you're calling from." I said, "Have you got a diving board?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Is it safe to use?" He said, "No." I said, "Why not?" He said, "It's nowhere near the pool." I said, "How deep's your deep end?" He said, 6 foot. I said, "How deep's your shallow end?" He said, 8 foot. I said, "How can you have a deep end that's 6 foot deep and a shallow end that's 8 foot deep?" He said, "The deep end's only half full." So I rang up my local building firm. I said, "I want to skip outside my house." He said, "I'm not stopping you." This bloke said to me, he said, "How do you make quick-drying cement?" And I said, "There's no hard and fast rules." I've got a baby cat called Caboodle. The other day I had to hold kitten Caboodle. I've got a baby cat called Caboodle. The other day I had to hold kitten Caboodle. I went out with a girl who lived on the top of a tower block. She was high maintenance. I used to go out with a bouncy ball. She was all over the place. I was going to run tours across my local Aztec cemetery, but I don't want to go over old ground. This bloke said to me, he said, "I'm a herald angel." I thought, ooh, hark at him. This cravat walked up to me and he's crying his eyes out. I can't stand emotional ties. 1 bruise plus 2 bruises equals 3 bruises. It's a lump sum. 1 pope plus 2 popes equals 3 popes. That's Catholic maths. When I was young, my mum, my dad, me and my brother and sister all wore 1 big woolly jumper. We were a close-knit family. I'm very good at doing little spots with a paintbrush. I'm a dab hand at it. I went to sleep with one eye open. I didn't sleep a wink. I thought rooters were novelists from Birmingham. I saw the musical Sweeney Todd the other day. It was a bit hard to follow, but I reckon the barber did it. I'm scared of cattle. I'm a coward. People who deal with dead bodies in hospital are always jolly. It's true what they say, the morgue the merrier. My donkey loves Russian politics. His favourite is Trotsky. So I was in Philadelphia. I said, "Can I stroke the Liberty Bell?" He said, "Feel free." So I went down the local record shop. I said, "Have you still got the Trogs?" He said, "How dare you?" I know exactly when my friends are going to be sick. I'm a forensic expert. I know exactly when my friends are going to be sick because I'm a forensic and I know exactly when my friends are going to be sick. I'm a forensic expert. Conjuring, that should do the trick. I don't swear, I promise. So I went on a 10-week motivational course. Well, I went to the first couple of weeks. I always say it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's why I lost my job as Usain Bolt's trainer. Michael Jackson's Neverland. It was just a rich man's playground. I've got a friend who's part of the Gutter Press. He's the editor of Drainpipe Weekly. I'm a paranoid dyslexic. I have a feeling everyone is out to meet G. I'm a paranoid dyslexic. I have a feeling everyone is out to met Guy. My stage name used to be Nick Root. Everyone was late for my gigs because on the posters it said, "See Nick Root." McDonald's was broken into twice today. It was a double cheese burglary. Where do pigs do their Christmas shopping? Hamleys. The Incredible Hulk's masseur? He always gets the rub of the green. This bloke said to me, he said, "Do you want to buy a barometer?" I said, "I think I'll take a rain check." When I was young, my mum didn't let me play with guns. I had to play with toy ones. This bloke said to me, he said, "Have you seen that TV series called Exploding Shrapnel?" I said, "I've caught bits of it." So I said to Tarzan, I said, "Why are you painting a picture of your pants on a tree?" He said, "You've got to draw the loin somewhere." I can't remember my homing pigeon's name, but I'm sure it'll come back to me. Apparently Jupiter is the next big thing. Legs up if you're double-jointed. Did you know Peter Pan had a brother called Deep? I saw a pig in a demolition derby. What a crashing bore. So I saw this bongo drum holding a pair of binoculars. He was a peeping tom-tom. I've got a Christian mobile. It's pray as you go. Nokia, and the door will be opened. So I said to this anteater, I said, "How do you eat flying ants?" And he just turned his nose up. So I was in a tube station and this bloke came up to me. He said, "I've just been making some bread and now I need the toilet." I said, "You want the Bakerloo?" So I went down the local carpet shop. I said, "Do you sell carpets by the yard?" He said, "No, we sell them in here." So I said to Vincent van Gogh, I said, "Does having one ear affect you?" He said, "Can you say that again?" I was only half listening. I went ice skating today. I stepped on a banana skin and I stopped dead. I went to a Swedish pantomime. It was called Snow White and the Sven Dwarfs. I went down the local health spa and there was a sign outside which said, "Come in and be pampered." I walked in and they attacked me with disposable nappies. I just had a pudding in the desserts. Okay. I just had a pudding in the desert. It was called creme camel. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome house band The Conkers. They've had a string of hits. I got an encore the other day. Well, I actually didn't get an encore. I walked off after 2 minutes and the promoter said, "You'll have to do more than that." So I went to the doctors. I said, I keep thinking I'm a German vodka. He said, schnapps out of it. This bloke said to me, he said, what do you think of semaphore? I said, I prefer Malaysia. I went to the local karaoke bar. I said, have you got more than words? He said, yes, we also have music. So I said to this barn owl, I said, I've just got engaged. He said, you twit to who? So I said to this barn owl, I said, I've just got engaged. He said, you twit to who? So I said to this barn owl, I said, I've just got engaged. He said, you twit to who? I said, it's this girl called Ina. Every time I see her, I say, hi Ina, and she laughs her head off. Tim Vine jokes 301 to 400. Page 101. I went to a country in the Middle East and everyone was very boisterous. It was rowdy Arabia. I saw this sign, it said hairdressing for men. I walked in and there was a rabbit trying on clothes and all these blokes saying, yeah, very nice. Last night I put on everything I owned on one horse and it squashed it. So I went down the local casino. I said, my girlfriend has just fallen asleep in the middle of a game of cards. He said, poker? I said, good idea. He said, do you fancy a game of solitaire? I said, all right then, and he walked off. This policeman came up to me and gave me a thin piece of paper and a pencil. I said, what's that for? He said, I want you to help me trace someone. A really handsome bloke sprinted past me and I thought, he's dashing. There was this bloke lying on the ground, snogging a shrimp. I said, what are you doing? He said, I've pulled a muscle. So I was standing on my window ledge, 6 floors up, looking down at the traffic. I thought, one slip now and it's curtains for me. And if I fall the other way, I'm going to die. And I went to the butcher's. He said, I bet you £10 you can't reach those 2 bits of meat. I said, I'm not betting. He said, why not? I said, the stakes are too high. Apparently, 1 in 5 people in the world are Chinese, and there's 5 people in my family, so it must be one of them. It's either my mum or my dad, or my older brother Colin, or my younger brother Hokachu. Hochachu. I think it's Colin. I always get very emotional when I go to weddings. The last wedding I went to, I cried my eyes out. It was when the vicar said, I'm afraid she hasn't turned up, Tim. So I went to the cinema and I saw a very sad film. The bloke behind me suddenly started wailing. I got hit on the back of the head with a harpoon. My girlfriend got in the car and her tights ripped, so I gave her the fan belt. This bloke said to me, he said, what do you think of Hello magazine? I said, it's okay. So I was in my car and my boss rang up. He said, you've been promoted, and I swerved. Then he rang up a second time and he said, you've been promoted again, and I swerved again. Then he rang up a third time and he said, you're managing director, and I went into a tree. The policeman came along, the policeman stroke woman came along, and she said, what happened to you? I said, I careered off the road. He stroke she stroke they said, I'm going to cut off one of your trouser legs and put it in a library. I said, that's a turn up for the books. The back of his anorak was leaping up and down, and people were chucking money to him. I said, do you earn a living doing that? He said, yes, this is my livelihood. So I was getting into my car, and this bloke said to me, he said, can you give me a lift? I said, sure, you look great. The world's your oyster, go for it. Someone actually complimented me on my driving today. They left a little note on my windscreen, and it said, parking fine. That was nice. So I was getting into my car, and this bloke said to me, he said, can you give me a lift? And I said, sure, you look great, the world's your oyster, go for it. So I went down the local ice cream shop. I said, I want to buy an ice cream. He said, hundreds and thousands? I said, we'll start with one. So I was getting into my car, and this bloke said to me, he said, can you give me a lift? I said, sure, you look great, the world's your oyster, go for it. He said, and they said, I went down to the local ice cream shop again, and I said, I want to buy an ice cream. And he said, hundreds and thousands? I said, we'll start with one. And he said, Knickerbocker glory? I said, you do get a certain amount of freedom in these trousers, yes. He said, Knickerbocker glory. I said, yes, you do get a certain amount of freedom in these trousers, yes. He said, tutti frutti? I said, not so bad yourself, tiger. He said, banana dreamboat? I said, all right, pack it in. So I went to the dentist, and he said, say ah. I said, why? He said, my dog's died. Most dentists' chair go up and down, don't they? This one I was in was going backwards and forwards. I thought, this is unusual, and the dentist said, Mr. Vine, get out of the filing cabinet. I was playing football on this aeroplane. It was amazing. I was running up the wing. I'm on a special diet. I only eat things with the word special in it. Special K, special fried rice, and of course, Marks and Spencer's strawberry cream sponge cake special offer. I said to my German friend, I said, why have you got piece of meat in the boot of your car? He said, that is my spare veal. I've got a German anti-aircraft gun. The German anti is called anti-aircraft gun. German anti-aircraft gun. Anti-aircraft gun. She gives me a lot of flack, that woman. So I was in Gibraltar, and I said, give me a whiskey. He said, on the rocks? I said, no, I'll have it here. He said, do you like it neat? I said, yes. He said, tuck your shirt in. He gave me a pint of gravel. I said, what's that? He said, one for the road. So I was walking down the street, and this woman stopped me. She said, excuse me, have you just washed your face with Imperial Leather soap? I said, yeah, can you smell it? She said, no, you've got the little label on your forehead. You can't get Dairy triangles in Bermuda. I bought some Bermuda shorts, and when I took them off, my pants had vanished. Talking of drugs, if you take too much LDS, you get dyslexia. A lot's gone wrong for me today. The first thing that went wrong was my girlfriend got run over by a bus. The second thing that went wrong was I lost my job at the bus company. Did you know you can't get a job as an airline pilot if your name is Jack? Because you walk into the cockpit and the co-pilot says, hi Jack, and everyone starts screaming. You also can't get a job as an airline pilot if your name is Ivor Hand Grenade. I spent the whole of today at the filming of a Sugar Puffs advert. It's always fascinated me who the actor is who plays Honey Monster. So during filming I ran forward, got Honey Monster in a headlock, ripped his mask off, and it was Bungle from Rainbow. So I went down the local garden centre. I said, I want to buy a garden. She said, we don't sell gardens, we sell things that are in gardens. I said, all right, I'll have a path. I rang up the local Ramblers club. I rang up the local Ramblers club, and this bloke went on and on. You know when you're in love, you get that tingly feeling all over your body. Well, that's led to me having 2 disastrous relationships with an electric fence and a cattle prod. I remember once we had a candlelit dinner, so everything was undercooked. My dog's not very intelligent. He only understands 2 words, sit and profitability. It took me ages to teach him to sit. For a long time he was running a small business, standing up. And he always misinterprets things that I say to him. I say, heal, and he goes down the local hospital and does what he can. I got home and he was sitting on the sofa. I said, get down, and he started dancing. When I met someone called Angela, when I meet someone called Angela, I get a temperature. I think I've got girl Angela fever. Girl Angela fever. Girl Angela fever. I think I've got girl Angela fever. Girl Angela fever. I was adopted by my biological parents. My adoptive parents left when I was 12. Dr. Hook. What a guitarist. Mind you, he got through a lot of strings. When I was at school, lessons were compulsory. You had to be there. Did you know Demi Moore used to have a sister called Not Any? I got up this morning and glued my letters together. I did a bit of male bonding. You should have been at the Manicure World Championships. What a nail-biting finish. I did a gig on a boat, and at the end they started shouting, more, more. I thought I was getting an encore, and then I realised we were drifting away from the bank. I bought an exercise DVD. On the cover it said running time 75 minutes. I thought, I can't run for that long. History, history, history. Yes, history repeats itself. Tiddles stole my manure and I'm speechless. That cat's got my dung. This bloke said to me, he said, who is your favourite African Star Wars character? I said, it's Nairobi 1 Kenobi. I won the lottery, bought a wind tunnel, and blew the lot. The traffic on the way here was so slow, we were overtaken by someone going in the opposite direction. This bloke said to me, he said, have you ever kept a diary? I said, no. At the end of the year, I always throw them away. A shepherd cooked me a pie. It was blackberry and apple. That was nice of him. So Jarvis Cocker went to the doctor. He said, whenever I listen to my greatest hits, my heart speeds up. The doctor said, those are palpitations. Isn't it annoying when you're trying to kill a fly and he thinks you're applauding him? The other day I was playing the violin. The violin is the name of a tune I can play on the penny whistle. Osmosis. Is that when the Osmonds spread out? Apparently, when the Osmonds get an encore, the audience shouts, "Mormon, Mormon!" I went to an Osmonds concert, and the bloke next to me started shouting, "Crazy Horses!" I said, "Shut up, I like them." I tore my girlfriend's lingerie, and I was done for criminal negligee. Negligee? Negligee. I was done for criminal negligee. I tore my girlfriend's lingerie, and I was done for criminal negligee. Strolling in municipal gardens. It's a walk in the park. Cold underground tombs. That's a bit cryptic. Wind-blown heaths. They're very Moorish. Did you know the best-selling DVD this year is Poltergeist? It's flying off the shelves. I saw this cannibal biting his nails. I said, "What's eating you?" He said, "I am." I remember when I played Noah in the school play. Ah, the memories are flowing back. Oh, shit. I remember when I played Noah in the school play. Ah, the memories are flooding back. If you want to know how many bees Noah had, check the archives. At the moment, I'm writing the stage version of the tornado film Twister. I've got as far as the first draft. There's a bit of a problem with the scenery, but I'm sure it'll all blow over. This bloke told me that I smelt like washing powder. It was so biodegrading. What do you call a 13-year-old with his head chopped off? A guillotine-ager. That joke was well executed. I never tell people what I get up to at the top of small hills. What goes on tour stays on tour. I saw a sign which said professional curtain cleaning. You don't really need the word professional. I'm sure no one cleans curtains for a laugh. Every morning I rub a wild bird under my arms. Osprey on deodorant. Osprey on deodorant. People often ask me, who's my favourite Antelope band? It's Gazelles Aloud. My girlfriend is half woman, half fish. I tell you what, it's made all the difference. There's something about an electric fence that I love, but I can't put my finger on it. When I was 40, I wanted to be an Egyptian. It was a pyramid life crisis. I saw a Greek comedian. He had a great sense of hummus. It was non-stop taramasa laughter. This bloke came up to me and he said, "Meow!" I thought, oh, he's a bit catty. Ever since I started working in an ejector seat factory, sales have gone through the roof. What's a Zulu's favourite chewing gum flavour? Spearmint. I'm always dropping cough sweets. I can't hold a tune. Tunes were 1970s throat lozenges. I tried to surf the internet and I fell off my chair. A lot of my fans are young horses. I've got a cult following. This bloke said to me, he said, "If you ever get your own TV show, can I appear on it?" I said, "Be my guest." So I went to the mirror shop. I said, "I want to buy a mirror, you blonde, lanky idiot." He said, "I'm over here, sir." Tim Vine jokes 401 to 500. So I was reading the obituary column. It said, Mars bar, packet of Rolos, double-decker. Then I realised, in fact, I was reading the A Bit Chewy column. It said a lorry load of tortoises crashed into a train load of terrapins. I thought, that's a turtle disaster. So I was on the aeroplane and I was sitting next to this bloke who looked exactly like me. I said, "What's your name?" He said, "Tim Vine." I was beside myself. So I went to the watch shop. I said, "I want to buy a watch." He said, "Analog?" I said, "No, just the watch." So I was taking the M4 out of London, and this bloke said, "Put it back." I passed this man playing Dancing Queen on the didgeridoo. I thought, that's Aboriginal. Believe it or not, there are twice as many eyebrows in the world as there are people. This Alka-Seltzer pill came up to me. He said, "I bet you can't make me laugh." So I threw a cup of water over him and he just dissolved. A long time ago I said to my father, I said, "I want to be a comedian." He said, "Practice in the bath." So I did, and now I am one. He gave me the same advice to my brother, but unfortunately he wanted to be an electrician. So I went to the doctors. I said, "I'm scared of lapels." He said, "You've got cholera." I said, "The older I get, the more I spread gossip." He said, "That's rheumatism." I said, "Last night I dreamt I was eating a large marshmallow." He said, "Don't tell me, when you woke up your pillow was gone." I said, "No, when I woke up one of my large marshmallows was missing." So I walked out and I was surrounded by protractors on motorbikes. It was hell's angles. So I said to this bloke, I said, "What do you do for a living?" He said, "I sell manure." I said, "I bet you're rolling in it." So I opened the front door when my dad was in the middle of fixing it and he flew off the handle. I went to a therapy group to help me cope with loneliness, and no one else turned up. I had a birthday party. There were so few people there we had to play keep the parcel. So I went to the barber's. He said, "Do you want a crew cut?" I said, "No, there's only me." I said, "Have you got any Brill cream?" He said, "Nah, it's not that good." I said, "Give me a ponytail." He said, "Once upon a time, this pony went to the seaside. ... Today I met the bloke who invented crosswords. I can't remember his name. It was P something, T something, something, something. I was playing tennis and this 30-foot bicycle went past. I thought, that's a long rayleigh. Rally. I was halfway up this mountain and this bloke started attacking me. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I don't like your altitude." Then all these cows starting falling over and scraping their knees. I said, "What's up with them?" He said, "They're grazing." This bloke said to me, he said, "Are you in favour of arranged marriages?" I said, "Yes, I am, because I went to a marriage that wasn't arranged and it was chaos." I was in this car wash and I started foaming at the mouth. I thought, I'm not having this, so I cycled out again. I went to a 4-star hotel and all the rooms were full of petrol. The receptionist said to me, she said, "Have you got a reservation?" I said, "Yes, I'm worried about the price." I said, "Can you give me an early morning call?" She said, "Cock-a-doodle-doo." I said, "Very good." I went to the local petrol station and there was nothing coming out of the nozzle. I walked in and I said, "Have you got your pumps on?" He said, "No, I'm wearing flip-flops." I said, "Super unleaded?" He said, "It is good, isn't it?" I went down my local beach and there was a young boy swimming on his own, so I threw him a pair of binoculars. He said, "What are these for?" I said, "You need supervision." So I went down the local shop. I said, I'm looking for a sailor with one arm. He said, it's not me, I'm a wholesaler. He said, what do you think of voluntary work? I said, I wouldn't do it if you paid me. So I was on this boat and all these bits of lamb started floating past. I thought, cool, it's getting choppy. Whenever I get into bed, I always think of France because my bed springs go Dodogni, Dodogni, Dodoing, Dodogni, Dodoing. So I went down the local pub, I drank a bottle of wine and lost my iPhone. I got arrested for being drunk and disorganised. The policeman said, get in the back of the van. So I got in and there was a freezer full of chalk ices and a machine called Mr. Whippy. He said, not that van. So I went to the doctors. I said, I've got a rash. He said, I'll be as quick as I can. So I was reading this book called The History of Glue and I couldn't put it down. So I went to the doctors. I said, I've got a rash, and he said, I'll be as quick as I can. I was born and bred in a bakery and raised in an oven. We even had a pantry. It was a tree covered in pants. I met this teenage goat and he had a human chin, which is quite fashionable for goats. I said, I see you've got a blokey. So I went down to the local electrical shop. I said, I'd like someone to sell me a kettle. He said, Kenwood? I said, where is he? So I went to the pet shop. I said, give me a goldfish. He said, aquarium? I said, I don't care what star sign he is. I said, I don't know whether to give my dog a tin of pedigree chum or give him a bone. He said, what's the name of your dog? I said, Nick Nack Paddy Whack. I was playing golf with my next door neighbour. After 18 holes, the scores were still level. I said, sudden death? He said, all right, so I shot him. Apparently, if you dangle a needle over a pregnant woman's stomach and it goes round and round, then it means you're going to have a girl. And if it goes side to side, it means you're going to have a boy. And if it gets pulled downwards, it means she's going to have a magnet. This midwife said to me, she said, Tim, have you ever been present at the birth of a baby? I said, yes, once. She said, what was it like? I said, it was dark, then suddenly very light. I stuck all my photos in the book, but found it really difficult to fill up another one. It's that tricky second album. I won't be singing a freshly written little song tonight. This show contains no nudity. Why did Shaggy go to the underwater disco? He likes a scuba-doo. I went to India and I spent 2 hours haggling with a deaf street seller. 1,000 pardons. We've got a saying in my family, I want a divorce. I told my girlfriend to buy some Japanese food, so she did. My grandpa had a bayonet. He caught 8 bears with it. Anger is all the rage. So I went to the pet shop. I said, I want my money back for this budgie sunbed. He said, that's a toasted sandwich maker. I've got racist stockings. They're my apartheids. They say life speeds up as you get older, which is why sometimes you see a pensioner holding onto a lamppost. Rolling hills, you wouldn't want to get in the way of one of them. I was invited to a party. On the invite it said, look smart, so I turned up in a lab coat holding a test tube. You know when you put on a party invite, no presents, just your presence. Well, I discovered it matters which way round you put those 2 words. I cut a sheep's wool by accident, sheer fluke. So I went to the baker's. I said, the loaf of bread I bought off you that's shaped like Winnie the Pooh has gone stale. He said, well, we've all got our crusty bear. I went to a Middle Eastern shindig. It was a Lebanese up. So I went to the baker's. I said, the loaf of bread I bought off you that's shaped like Winnie the Pooh has gone stale. He said, well, we've all got a crusty bear. Crusty bear. I went to a Far Eastern shindig. It was a Cantonese up. I went to a shindig organised by Scrooge. It was an Ebenezer up. Have you seen that James Bond film about calculators? Casio Royale? So I said to my mum, I said, I've bought you a tablecloth. She said, that's a bit over the top. This bloke said to me, he said, you're a stencil. I said, cut it out. I've always wanted to be a Hollywood waiter, so I've decided to get a job as a film star and hope a chef spots me. When I run around naked, I can be very cruel. I've got a ruthless streak. This bloke said to me, he said, I want to explore space. I said, your mum must be over the moon. Since I became a comedian, the phone hasn't stopped ringing. It's broken. This bloke said to me, he said, your answer machines recorded my voice. Your answer machines recorded my voice. Your answer machines recorded my voice. I said, all right, I've got the message. So I said to this bloke, I said, where are you from? He said, UK. I said, I'm fine, thanks. How are you? I saw a barrel of oil performing in a comedy club. He was slick, but he was crude. I'll tell you who's a cheesy performer. Mozzarella Fitzgerald. So I bought a rocket salad, and it took off vertically. Welcome to OCD the Musical, starring in order of height... ... This bloke said to me, he said, I've drunk 90 gallons of soup. I said, you're full of it. My dad's in charge of Sunday lunch. He rules the roast. This bloke said to me, he said, Tim, how often do you exaggerate? I said, never, ever, ever. So I said to Charles Darwin, I said, what was before the Big Bang? He said, God knows. I saw a bloke kissing a mallard. I thought, love a duck. I used to drive a pizza delivery van. It was a delivery van made of pizza. I was going to buy some slippers today, but then I got cold feet. Andrew Lloyd Webber's new musical is about a fizzy drink, the Fanta of the Opera. I went to school in a Wendy house. I found it hard to fit in. The game Monopoly is all very well, but when are they going to bring out Stereopoly? Stereopoly. When are they going to bring out Stereopoly? I keep getting death threats. Pardon? If I ever find out what a spoonerism is, I'll heat my cat. Today I mended a violin, I restrung a violin, and I polished a violin. Just fiddly jobs, really. Sometimes when I'm on the phone to a friend and a noisy motorbike drives past, I say for a joke, wow, look at the size of that wasp. A friend of mine did that to me, and then when I went round to his house, I discovered he'd been killed by a giant wasp. There's a lot of trouble with guns and gangs nowadays. Even the Boy Scouts have a problem with it. That's why they sing that song, Gun, Gang, Ghoulie, Ghoulie, Ghoulie. Did you know if you set your mobile to vibrate and drop it down a well, you'll never see it again? Have you seen that film where sunburnt agricultural workers can change themselves into man-powered watercraft? Tanned farmers, rowboats in disguise. If God had wanted us to reuse everything, he wouldn't have invented peaches. Apparently stamps are worth more if they've been sent to someone, so I sent all my stamps to someone and now he's got them. Tim Vine jokes 501 to 600. My favourite party game is Blind Man's Buff. That's when you find someone who's blind and then you polish them. Do you ever go to McDonald's and when they say, do you want to eat it here or take it away, you say, I want to eat it here, and then you eat your entire meal standing by the till? So I went to the supermarket. I said, there's a hair on this meat. He said, let go of my leg. I said, I want a ring donut. He said, there's a phone in the corner. So I went to the off license and I said, tenants? He said, no, we own the place. I used to live in a teapot. I know what you're thinking. Poor you. I was christened with a flamethrower. That was a baptism of fire. And the vicar was wearing a gorilla suit, which was a blessing in disguise. He was a Dutchman with inflatable shoes. One day he went for a run and popped his clogs. So I ate this chess set and it was horrible. It took me back to the shop. I took it back to the shop and I said, that's stalemate. He said, are you sure? I said, checkmate. I said, I feel like an indecisive battery. He said, don't be so negative. I said, but I do. He said, are you sure? I said, I'm positive. My favourite composer is Handel, who later teamed up with Hinge and Brackett to form The Doors. I'm totally deaf, and I never thought I'd hear myself say that. So I went to a fancy dress party, dressed as sodium chloride. I walked in, and this bloke threw sulfuric acid on my head. It was terrible. I didn't know how to react. So I got home and discovered a burglar pressing one of my shirts. So I punched him, because you've got to strike while the iron's hot. I saw this bloke chatting up a cheetah. I thought, he's trying to pull a fast one. So I said to this train driver, I said, I want to go to Paris. He said, Eurostar? I said, I've been on telly, but I'm no Dean Martin. At least the Eurostar's comfortable. It's murder on the Orient Express. So I said to this train driver, I said, I want to go to Paris. He said, Eurostar? I said, I've been on telly, but I'm no Dean Martin. At least the Eurostar's comfortable. It's murder on the Orient Express. So I went down the local gym. I said, Mr. Nasian, can you teach me how to do the splits? He said, how flexible are you? I said, I can't make Tuesdays. I love climbing into a small suitcase. I can hardly contain myself. I went to an Indian restaurant. I thought, this smells familiar. Do you ever get that? Deja Vindaloo? The waiter said to me, he said, curry okay? I said, I might do summer lovin' when I finish this. The waiter said to me, he said, curry okay? I said, I might do summer lovin' when I finish this. You know those trick candles that you blow out and a couple of seconds later they come alight again? Well, the other day there was a fire at the factory that makes them. My favourite film is the Clint Eastwood classic Unforgiven. At the moment they're working on a sequel. It's called Look, I Said I'm Sorry. So I met this gangster who pulls up the back of people's pants. It was Wedgie Cray. So I went down the local video shop. I said, can I take out the Elephant Man? He said, he's not your type. I said, can I have Batman Forever? He said, no, you've got to bring it back tomorrow. I said, what about another 48 hours? He said, tomorrow. I said, have you got Big Trouble in Little China? He said, no, I'm just wearing tight trousers. I said, "The hunt for Red October?" He said, "I'll have a look in the stockroom." This bloke said to me, he said, "Do you want a game of darts?" I said, "All right then. Nearest to bull starts." I said, "Bah." He said, "Moo." I said, "You're the closest." I'm against hunting. In fact, I'm a hunt saboteur. I go out the night before and shoot the fox. The other day I sent my girlfriend a huge pile of snow, and then I rang her up. I said, "Did you get my drift?" I went down the local supermarket. I said, "I want to make a complaint. This vinegar's got lumps in it." He said, "Those are pickled onions." So I bought some Armageddon cheese. On the packet it said, "Best before end." I got home and there was a dead chicken flying around the house, so I rang up the vicar. I said, "Get here quick, I've got a poltergeist." So I went to the Chinese restaurant. I said, "These noodles are a bit crunchy." He said, "You're eating the chopsticks." So I ordered, and this duck walked up to me. He said, he kind of gave me a red rose and said, "Your eyes sparkle like diamonds." I said, "Waiter, I've asked for an aromantic duck." So I ordered, and this duck walked up to me, gave me a red rose and said, "Your eyes sparkle like diamonds." I said, "Waiter, I asked for an aromatic duck." I'm in a good mood today. I just entered a competition and won a year's supply of Marmite. 1 jar. Did you know if a stick insect lays its eggs in a jar of Bovril, it will give birth to a litter of twiglets? This bloke said to me, he said, "Can I come into your house and talk to you about your carpets?" I thought, that's all I need, a Jehovah's Witness. My next door neighbour worships exhaust pipes. He's a Catholic converter. So I rang up I rang up the British Telecom. I said, "I want to report a nuisance phone call." He said, "Not you again." I was having dinner with chess champion Garry Kasparov, and we had a black and white check tablecloth. It took him 2 hours to pass me the salt. He said, "You remind me of a pepper pot." I said, "I'll take that as a condiment." So I said to this acrobat, I said, "Have you got any winter pepper?" He said, "No, I need summer salt." Did you know all male tennis players are witches? For example, Goran, even he's a witch. I've got a friend who's fallen in love with 2 school bags. He's bisexual. So I was in Tesco's and I saw this man and woman wrapped in a barcode. I said, "Are you 2 an item?" In the morning my voice sounds like Barry White. Imagine what Barry White sounded like in the morning. Me, probably. George Lucas has a snotty little brother. He's called George Mucus. I remember being diagnosed with amnesia. That was a day to forget. This bloke said to me, he said, "I'm going to start an agency that helps people who have marital problems." I said, "I can relate to that." I was in my car doing 30 miles an hour and a friend of mine phoned me. He said, I'm 5 miles ahead of you and I'm doing 29 miles an hour. I said, "I'll catch up with you later." A huge pile of credit cards listing to one side. It's the Leaning Tower of Visa. Herod went to the gym every morning. He was fit for a king. The other day I had to fit as many school children into a classroom as I could. I hate filling in forms. I watched Madame Butterfly last night. In the first half, she was a caterpillar. My nephew is a man of very few words. He's 6 weeks old. I went to a sweatshop and I bought 2 gallons of sweat. This bloke said to me, he said, "I've changed myself into a pane of glass." I said, You've made yourself perfectly clear. Time for the bird of prey quiz. Fingers on buzzards. If you ever go for a walk with the Scissor Sisters, make sure they're pointing away from you. Do you know the reason why Miss Piggy never got married? It's because she can't commit. It's because she can't commit. So this acorn said to me, he said, whenever I'm underground, I head away from the surface. I said, grow up. I tried yo-yo dieting, but it's not easy eating yo-yos. They tend to come back up again. I saw this bloke laughing like a drain. He was going... make loud gurgling noise. I haven't seen a cowboy film for ages. It's all quiet on the Western Front. I see the moving staircase debate is escalating. I love it when people repeat what I've said, but don't quote me on that. If you ever split up with an anchor, let them down gently. This bloke said to me, he said, what's your favourite buzzword? I said, bzzz. People are always using lingo and jargon. The trouble is, when Lynn went, she took the jar with her. Every winter I adjust my car wheels so they don't slip on the ice. Snow chains there. This bloke said to me, he said, do you ever feel like you're 13 years old? I said, a teeny bit. So I said to this girl, I said, I find the transparent part of your eyes that covers the iris very attractive. She said, cornea? I said, you must be an angel sent from heaven. So I said to this girl, I said, I find the transparent part of your eyes that covers the iris very attractive. She said, cornea? I said, you must be an angel sent from heaven. They say if you're forced to play a musical instrument when you're at school, you're less likely to want to do it later in life. That's true of a lot of things. When I was at school, I was forced to stick my head down the toilet. I've just been on holiday across the pond. I spent 2 weeks in the tool shed. I met this alien who couldn't stop swearing. He was an extraterrestrial. I find the hardest thing about voting with your feet is doing a handstand in the polling booth. Sherlock Holmes keeps following me, so I wrote him a letter. Dear Stalker, there's too much wildlife in my garden. I can't get the bird in hedgeways. I saw Sherlock Holmes crushing oranges. I said, what are you making? He said, the juice. I saw Watson on the street. I said, what's up? He said, I've been Sherlocked out. I went to the Amazon basin. Big taps. I got stuck in a thick jungle. I couldn't hack it. Sometimes I relax with a large curved knife. That's a scythe of relief. Nights in white. What have I? Satin? Nights in white. What have I sat in? So I said to this air hostess, I said, I can't see straight. She said, are you intoxicated? I said, no, I'm in economy. Have you seen that television show where you run over an animal and then get it valued? Antiques Roadkill. This bloke said to me, he said, I'm fictional. I said, get real. Sometimes I lie at the top of a grassy bank and then rotate my body through several revolutions until I'm at the bottom. That's just the way I roll. I went to the doctors. I said, people keep telling me to get down from things. He said, come off it. Apparently in Hawaii, they like to honour Lulu. In Russia, there is a man on trial called Viktor Aristov Christov Banalakutek Vik Volstoy Rivenskor. He's trying to clear his name. He'll need a big run-up. I never eat oak, beech or sycamore. I'm teetotal. No. I never eat oak, beech or sycamore. I'm tree total. I caught a cold on a carousel. I think there was something going round. A dandelion, the king of the jungle, wearing a cravat. So I went down the local art gallery. I said, "You've got a lovely view of the pond from here." He said, "That's a painting." I said, "Well, I'm glad you told me because I was about to go outside and offer to help those chaps with their cart." From now on, I'm buying records, not CDs, and that's final. Tim Vine jokes 601 to 700. I used to go out with an anaesthetist. She was a local girl. She was a knockout. We had a lot of good times in general. If there are any more anaesthetistic jokes, I'm not conscious of them. There are probably more somewhere out there in the ether. Anyone got their own? Anyone got any of their own in a similar vein? My local Robin has opened a coffee shop in his house, Nest Cafe. I was walking down the streets and I passed this man who was shouting, "Marmite! 9 inches of it." And I thought, that's laying it on a bit thick. I've taken up speed reading. I can read War and Peace in 20 seconds. It's only 3 words, but it's a start. I had a dream last night. I was chopping up carrots with the Grim Reaper, dicing with death. This bloke said to me, he said, "Do you believe in ghosts?" I said, "Of course I don't, you silly Elizabethan sailor." No man is an island. That's what my friend said to me, and his name is Bob Ados. When I was on holiday, my girlfriend was hit by a tidal wave of tonic water. She got swept away. I went to this church, and this bloke threw hot ash on me. I was incensed. Tiger Woods has got a terrible temper. I said to him, "Do you like golf buggies?" And he went off on one. I saw an advert which said, "Television for sale, £1, but it's stuck on full volume." How can you turn that down? I'll tell you something that's worth its weight in gold. Gold. You know those fake flames that you see in a restaurant? A piece of cloth blowing up through a light? Well, if you set fire to one of them, it looks really unrealistic. We're told in school that the coldest bit of the flame is the orange bit, which is a bit pointless because it's still hot. I'm sure when Joan of Arc was burning at the stake, no one shouted out, "Joan, get in the orange bit." When I was a teacher, I had a nervous tick. Everyone got really good marks. Everything has changed. Just look at the shops. Toys are us, carpets are us, and there's one near me that sells right angles to triangles, Pythagoras. Why did the cod have lovely skin? Because he used human liver oil. I bought my Latin American manager a Vauxhall. I got my bossa nova. I was going to play my drums today, but somebody stole them. Bongos, that idea. I've got a friend called Peter, who changes his name as often as he changes his shirt. He's always been called Peter, and he stinks. I've got a friend called Peter who changes his name as often as he changes his shirt. He's always been called Peter, and he stinks. I went to a pet shop and there was a hamster in the window. It was literally in the window, double glazing, stuck between the two panes. I was playing tennis with a napkin and I said, "Hey, don't serviette." Godzilla fell asleep on the M25 and he's left a huge tailback. My mum and dad always do things straight away. I call them my immediate family. So I was in this pub. I said, "Where's your bartender?" He said, "It's not tender anywhere. It hasn't got any feelings." I was in Kenya and I spent 2 weeks on a Land Rover safari. What a waste of time. I didn't see any Land Rovers. I bought a dog whistle. It's pointless. Whenever I put it in his mouth, he just starts dribbling. I used to run my car on lighter fuel. It works very well, but on a windy day, you've got to cup your hands around the bonnet. I've got a friend called Lance, but I don't see Lance a lot. I've got a 7-foot fence around my garden, and I could see my neighbour walking the other side of it. I said, "Are you 9 foot tall or on stilts?" He said, "Both. I'm standing in a ditch." I saw this guy in a suit of armour and he jumped over 30 double-decker buses. It was Medieval Knievel. So I went to the baker's. I said, "Give me a sausage roll." He said, "Do you want me to put it in the microwave for you?" I said, "Yes, please." And he came home with me. I saw this guy in a suit of armour and he jumped over 30 double-decker buses. It was Medieval Knievel. So I went to the music shop. I said, "Can I see your kettle drum?" He said, "No, but would you like to see my toaster play the nose flute?" I was standing on the train station and the train came in so late that the driver had flowers in his hair and was singing, "Hey Jude." I went down the local swimming baths. I said, "Your chlorine is really getting up my nose." He said, "She's got as much right to be there as you have." I once had a job in a pet cemetery. Nothing much, I was a dog's body. Gene Vincent wrote Bebopalula while hanging upside down in the lion cage at Whipsnade Zoo. They don't write songs like that anymore. I've got a friend who's very talkative when he goes up mountains. He's a social climber. Rome wasn't built in a day. That's Milton Keynes you're thinking of. I get my shoes specially made by a dentist and a carpenter. I have to fight tooth and nail for them. A bit of advice: if a crocodile attacks you, jam a pencil in his mouth. Don't stick it behind his ear. I did a gig in a zoo and I got babooned off. I used to be a deep sea diver, but I couldn't stand the pressure. I once played poker with my eyebrows. I said, "I'll raise you." Kenneth Williams was in a film about someone making a chicken tikka. It was a curry-on. The reason they take organs from pigs and give them to humans is because pigs can't play organs. My banjo said to me, he said, "Tim, I'm leaving you." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you're always picking on me." I developed a picture of some cereal. It was a bit grainy. I think I may be a talented photographer. I just took one photo with my camera phone and it asked me if I wanted to open a gallery. So I went to the DVD shop. I said, "Can you recommend a Tom Cruise film?" He said, "Collateral?" I said, "What's the damage?" Last time I went to McDonald's, I destroyed the front of the shop and hospitalised 4 people. It's not my fault. There was a sign outside which said, "Drive in." I saw this man acting suspiciously next to Mount Everest. I said, "What have you been up to?" He said, 8,000 feet. I've got a friend who's very well to do, or to be precise, he's got a lot of welding to do. I've put something aside for a rainy day. It's an umbrella. I've been out with a number of girls. 1 is the number. I've been having trouble with hate mail. It's the price of stamps. So I was sitting in the laundrette watching the washing go round, and I thought I should bring mine in here one day. I've got loads of alternative friends, or enemies as I call them. Yesterday I cracked a joke, so I can't use it again. Have you tried that new 007 glue? Bonds in seconds. I'll tell you an actor who's rubbish. Dustbin Hoffman. I saw a little tree with a guitar. Spruce Springsteen. I went to a music shop and a man was putting blankets over all the electric guitars of a lower resonance. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm just covering all bases." You know when people say step on the gas? How do you actually do that? My favourite Beatles song is about lettuce, cucumber and tomato. It's called The Salad of John and Yoko. I've got a friend from Norway who only likes obscure Beatles songs. Well, a Norwegian would. I saw Yoko Ono bathing her husband outside. I said, "Don't wash your dirty Lennon in public." Maltese people, they don't melt in your hands. The other day I proposed to an indigenous New Zealander. I said, "Will you marry me? Marry." I said, "Will you marry me?" I always wear a jacket to chase people. It's my pursuit. Try that for size. Try that for size. Try that for size. My girlfriend said to me, she said, "The trouble with you is you've got a glib answer to everything." I says, "It takes one to know one." I tell my dog all my secrets. He's called Confido. Yesterday I went around about 50 times. I was trying to win the Turner Prize. I went to the doctors. I said, "People keep asking me to join them in a steamroller." He said, "Level with me." Release Richard Bacon, Amnesty International. Euro Millions. It's a lottery. So I went down the local pub. I said, "Have you got a bar position available?" He said, "Well, no one's leaning on the jukebox at the moment." This woman said to me, she said, "I am a very tactile person." I thought, ooh, touchy. The person who works out my tax is an idiot by all accounts. Your next breath of air. I'll just pause while you take that in. There's a pirate I haven't seen for ages, Long Gone Silver. The other day I got an invoice for a yak, Buffalo Bill. Ugly. It's not looking good, is it? One of the most dangerous games in the world is Cyanide and Seek. The most dangerous winter sport is bobsleighing for apples. So I saw this pond full of German cars. The water was murky. If you're a witch, you've got to make sure you get your 5 daily potions. Where does Robin Hood make his own curries? In Sherwood Forest. I caught an infection at my karate class. It was kung flu. I do portraits of boxers. I can knock them out really quickly. Scientists have almost invented a supersonic male rabbit. In my opinion, they're just trying to make a quick buck. So I went to the nightclub. I said, "Have you got a 70s night?" He said, "We used to." I said, "When?" He said, "In the 70s. I've got a biro that doesn't write properly. It's a bit pointless. The trouble with an all-day breakfast is you've got to eat it so slowly. Tim Vine jokes 701 to 800. So I went to the sweet shop. I said, "Do you do Twix?" He said, "I'm quite good at juggling." I went to Pizza Express and there was a sign outside. It said, "Look out for our new menu." I walked in and it hit me on the back of the head. I said, "Give me an American hot." The next thing I know, big fat guy, Hawaiian shirt. "Can somebody open a window?" in American. I ordered dessert and he gave me tiramisu with a blindfolded horse. I said, "No mascarpone." I said, "Give me an American hot." The next thing I know, big fat guy, Hawaiian shirt. "Can somebody open a window?" I went to an airport. I tripped over some luggage and I went flying. I ordered dessert, and he gave me tiramisu with a blindfolded horse. I said, "No mascarpone." This taxi drove past and it was covered in chili sauce. It was a mini kebab. So I went to the doctors. I said, "People keep talking to me about cereal crops." He said, "Migraine?" I said, "Don't you start." When I look in the mirror, I can't believe I used to weigh 28 stone, because I didn't. So I was reading a Bible in a hotel and I started feeling dizzy. It was a Gideon. My Vickers disappeared. Somebody get me missing Parsons. The last thing my vicar said to me was, "Never eat probiotic yogurt." Well, what he actually said to me was, "Never dabble in your cult." I normally play the trumpet with some buxom ladies. I am part of a big brass band. I used to live with a rugby ball, then I kicked her out. I said, "Stay in touch." Rugby jokes. It's a nice try. So I said to this bloke, I said, "How can I find out when's the next train from London to Glasgow?" He said, "Why don't you look online?" I said, "That's a bit dangerous, isn't it?" A friend of mine always wanted to get run over by a steam train. When it happened, he was chuffed to bits. I've just been on a cycling holiday. It was the most exhausting thing I've ever done in my entire life. I've got to get a smaller caravan. I went to a computer shop and I said, "Whenever I plug in my laptop, it overheats." He said, "That's not a laptop, it's a George Foreman bar and grill." I said, "Where can I look up information?" He said, "Yoo-hoo!" I said, "Do you like that question?" I said, "Where can I look up information?" He said, "Yoo-hoo!" I said, "Do you like that question?" This spaceship landed in front of me and out of it stepped a 20-foot cream bun. It was one of those extra cholesterols. It was one of those extra cholesterols. So this woman began to hover above me and she said, "Do you want to buy some moisturiser?" I thought, she's having an out-of-body shop experience. I went down the local shop and I bought some blonde hair and blue eyes. I'm saving that for a special Caucasian. I went to this shop that sells foreheads. He said, "Can I interest you in buying a forehead?" I said, "No, I'm browsing." If you want to confuse them in a charity shop, just hold up one of their old shoes and say, "Have you got this in a 10? I once had a job as a driver for Spartacus. I know what you're thinking, slave driver. When I was in the Navy, we were all named after our surnames. Harrison was Sailor H, Williams was Sailor W, and because I was Vine, I was Sailor V. Sailor V. The captain made me wear trousers that were far too small for me. He ran a tight ship. He was actually a sheep, and one day me and the other sailors threw him overboard. We were done for mutiny. I used to work in a garage which has a jet wash. It was pointless. There was nowhere for them to land. People used to come in and ask me stupid questions. A bloke came in and said, "What am I supposed to do with de-icer?" I said, "Put it on the windscreen." He said, "What do you think of WD-40? I said, "I quite like red, red wine." I've got a job bursting people's boils for no charge. Freelance. I'm on the Oliver Twist diet. It's grueling. Do you know what's in a Waldorf salad? Walls and dwarfs. So I saw this genie. He said, "Why am I so frightened?" I said, "It's obvious. Your bottle's gone." You know when you're reading a book in the car, it makes you feel sick. I find long before that happens, you crash. I was standing at a bus stop and this bloke got a cigarette out and he looked at me and he said, "Do you smoke yourself?" And I said, "What kind of lunatic smokes themselves?" So I went to a fancy dress party dressed as an oven. A friend of mine also came dressed as an oven and he was really annoyed. He said, "I thought you said you were coming as a parrot." I said, "No, what I said was I'm coming as a cockatoo." Then these two sore lips walked past. I said, "Hello, chaps." When it comes to cosmetic surgery, a lot of people turn their noses up. Do you remember the days when everyone had a tan? The Bronze Age. Bit of advice, never wear helium nail polish at an auction. I went to this party. It was full of estate agents and belly dancers, movers and shakers. I met a girl at a bungee jumping club. I said, "Are you attached?" She said, "No, I'm not." She was drop dead gorgeous. So I said to this estate agent, I said, "My house is in a terrible state." He said, "What about a lick of paint?" I said, "No thanks, have you got any toffees?" He said, "What colour is your living room?" I said, "Off-white." He said, "How far off-white?" I said, "Green." In the end, I sold the house for £100,000. I was very pleased with that because I was renting. So I met a girl in a nightclub. I said, "What's your name?" She said, "Chantel." And I said, "Oh, go on." I did further education. I went to Neptune University. I did further education. I went to Neptune University. So I went to a fancy dress party and everyone was dressed as a sore thumb, except me. I stuck out like a vicar. So I went to the pub and I said, "Can I have a pint of Pride?" He said, "It's finished, but can I interest you in a glass of self-esteem?" I said, "Can I have a pint of Break for Freedom?" He said, it's run out. Ladybird contracts. There's a lot of small print. My dog got a job in a bank. The trouble is, he buried his bonus. I've got a normal toilet. It's bog standard. It's very easy to become addicted to helter-skelters. It's a downward spiral. I've got a normal toilet. It's bog standard. Last night, I was eating a pancake and some bloke pushed me. Apparently it was Shove Tuesday. So I went into my kitchen and I saw a hurricane making a pot of tea. I thought, there's a storm brewing. The other day I did a lecture on colourful reefs. A few fish turned up to offer me some coral support. It's great to see so many familiar faces here tonight. The old 2 eyes, 1 nose and a mouth combo. It's still popular. Last Sunday I went to church and it sounded beautiful because everyone was singing off the same hymn sheet. So I said to this bloke, I said, when I took my granny to Egypt, she got very confused. He said, senile? I said, yes, but she thought it was the Thames. What do you call a deaf country singer? Dolly Parton. People used to call me names at school. They used to say, oi, names, get over here. The other day I saw a film about a dwarf on a zebra crossing. I wasn't that impressed. To me it was just a little pedestrian. So I said to this bat, how's it hanging? A friend said to me, he said, I've just removed my son's ears and glued them to his chin. I said, you're spoiling that child. I was on a bus late last night. It was just me and the driver. It was really scary because he was sitting at the back with me. This jellyfish walked into a shop. I thought, he's a slippery customer. So I was weeping over this sergeant major. Well, it's good to have a soldier to try on. It's good to have a soldier to cry on. My English teacher brought his dog into lessons. It was the teacher's pet. So I was weeping over this sergeant major. Well, it's good to have a soldier to cry on. I met an annoying peach. He was a pain in the nectarine. I fell over in a bookies. It was a betting slip. So I went to the camera shop. I said, shutter speed? He said, we close at 5. So I said to this bloke, I said, I need a taxi. He said, flag one down. I said, where am I going to get a flag? I actually went to university 3 times in different disguises. When they found out, they gave me the 3rd degree. You can say nosy and you can say eerie, but you can't say IE. Nosy, eerie, IE. They have a fire extinguisher at my church. They also have a brimstone extinguisher. So I said to this castle, I said, how come you haven't got any water around you? He said, I've been demoted. I get seasick. That's only after a couple of glasses. A friend of mine has a very unsuccessful perfume shop. He's got more sense than money. So I said to my girlfriend, I said, why have you got chocolate on your chest? She said, I'm wearing a Mars bra. This bloke said to me, he said, I'm never going to use a pen again. I said, can I have that in writing? So I said to this train, I said, why are you late? He said, sorry, I got sidetracked. Mr. Pekin, Mr. Pistachio, Mr. Cashew. What are you? Nuts! Be careful of the most important buffalo. He's a maniac. I learnt the piano to grade 8, and that's quite a slope. Why do porters get their own loos? I bought a flat screen aquarium. There wasn't enough room for the fish to turn around, so they all ended up one end. Tim with a boat on his head. Do you like my boater? It's a hat. This chocolate went past at 100 miles an hour. It was a Ferrari Rocher. A friend of mine and his wife got caught in the housing trap. I feel a bit guilty setting it, but I wasn't expecting visitors. My girlfriend has big ears. She's made of silver and she stands on a plinth. She's my trophy girlfriend. Fields, they're as old as the hills. I saw this bloke in a restaurant eating a television. He was having a set lunch. This bloke said to me, he said, I read in the paper that you overpumped a tyre. I said, that's been blown out of all proportion. I've invented a new flamethrower. Unfortunately, it hasn't set the world on fire. This bag of rubbish came up to me. He said, I'm at your disposal. So I went to the sauna Olympics. It was a proud moment. I was steam captain. The Bayeux tapestry was bought by a farmer, and that's how it got its name. They said, where do you want it? He said, Bayeux. Bayeux tapestry. Bayeux. 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 Bayeux tapestry. Tim Vine jokes, 801 to 900. Bob Dylan's real name is Bob Zimmerman. His school photo is in a Zimmerman frame. This bloke left a huge lump of plasticine in my dressing room. I don't know what to make of it. So I said to this Scotsman, did you have spots when you were a teenager? He said, acne. I saw this bloke and he was shouting out, lambs for sale, were £10, now £5. I thought, that's sheep at half the price. One-armed butlers. They can take it, but they can't dish it out. What do you call a lady with big teeth who has a sleep after lunch? Siesta Ranson. How come Tarzan was always grumpy? Because he had a chimp on his shoulder. So I said to Alexander Fleming, the inventor of antibiotics, I said, I'd like to meet you on Tuesday. He said, hold on, I'll penicillin you in. An alphabet grenade. If that goes off, it could spell disaster. So I rang up Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the first ever telephone. He said, where the hell are you calling from? Velcro. What a rip-off. This bloke said to me, he said, whatever you do, don't mention deodorant. I said, sure, mum's the word. A friend of mine found a gold coin in a lump of earth. Lucky sod. So I was mucking about in a lesson and the teacher made me stand outside. I was petrified. It was a flying lesson. The advantage of easy origami is twofold. So I went to the doctors and I said, I think I've picked up an infection when I went swimming. I've got a swelling under my shoulder. He said, you're still wearing one of your armbands. This bloke said to me, he said, do you want to use my ice rink for 10p? I thought, what a cheapskate. So I was in this horse race, and when I got to the finishing line, I was hit by an apple seed, pipped at the post. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my personality. I'm a very private and secretive person. That's it, really. During the Second World War, my grandfather couldn't stop scribbling. He got hit by the doodlebug. When I was in Vietnam, this fortune teller came up to me and he was on fire. He was a napalm reader. I'll tell you something that will warm your heart. Electrically heated lungs. It's my girlfriend's birthday today. I bought her a giant helium balloon. That didn't go down very well. So this bloke said to me, he said, as a young boy, was your mother very strict with you? I said, let me make one thing absolutely clear. My mother was never a young boy. Mind you, she used to beat me with a telephone. I was always on the receiving end. So I rang up the amputee helpline and I got cut off. Have you seen that new film where a transvestite plays hide and seek in a zoo? Crouching Tiger, Hidden Drag Queen. So I bought this DVD, and in the extras it said deleted scenes. When I had a look, there was nothing there. Last night I dreamt I was the author of Lord of the Rings. It was Tolkien in my sleep. We've got to have a hobbit. Last night I dreamt I was the author of Lord of the Rings. I was Tolkien in my sleep. Well, you've got to have a hobbit. So I said to this bloke, I said, did you know Marie Osmond is about to appear in the world's worst film? He said, Warner Brothers? I said, I already have. So I went to a record shop and I said, what have you got by the doors? He said, a bucket of sand and a fire blanket. I said, can you recommend some music for a kids' party? He said, Small Faces? I said, of course they are, they're kids. I said, I want some music to play in the car. I'm driving from London to Newcastle. He said, Bjork? I said, no, Badurnham. I said, can you recommend some music for a kids' party? He said, Small Faces? I said, of course they have, they're kids. I said, I want some music to play in the car. I'm driving from London to Newcastle. He said, Bjork? I said, no, Badurnham. Badurham. What's all this fuss about the iPod? It plays 5,000 songs in a random order over a 1 month period. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that called the radio? Do you know what slugs call snails? Gypsies. Have you seen the new reality TV show where religious insects go climbing? It's called I'm a Celibate Flea, Get Me Mountain Gear. I went to this squirrel nightclub. There were hundreds of squirrels there. I said to the squirrel barman, I said, can I have a bag of nuts? He said, to be honest with you, I can't remember where I put them. My mum and dad are complete opposites. You couldn't hope to meet two such totally different blokes. My local police chief does a talk on heroin, so you can't understand any of it. A friend of mine was killed by his own mum and dad. I blame the parents. I was mugged recently at Victoria Station and I burst into tears. A policeman came up to me and said, I am fining you £10. I said, for crying out loud. He said, yes. I said, I've got to go to court on a drink driving charge. He said, is it the Old Bailey? I said, no, Harvey's Bristol Cream. Tequila, schnapps, sambuca. I'm calling the shots. So I said to this bloke, I said, punch me in the face. So he punched me in the face. And as I was lying on the ground, I thought, I asked for that. At the moment, I'm reading My Life by Bill Clinton, which freaked me out because I didn't know he knew anything about my life. This bloke said to me, he said, I've got bubonic plague. I said, don't give me that. He said, I don't like interpreters. I said, speak for yourself. He said, can you tell me what you call someone who comes from Corsica? I said, of course I can. Of course I can. A friend of mine has 3 legs. He's always one step ahead of me. This bloke said to me, he said, how come your breakfast cereal is bleating? I said, it's the porridge goats. I've got really painful fingers, but that's my fault for giving an Indian head massage to a hedgehog. This Roman emperor said to me, he said, what's the weather like? I said, hail, Caesar. Do you ever lick an envelope and think it tastes so good that you eat the whole thing? My favourite overweight 70s band were the Obesity Rollers. The scariest cartoon I've ever seen was Gaddafi Duck. Ever since I gave up bread, I've lost loaves of weight. I got food poisoning off an Italian dessert. I've got a good mind to tiramisu the company. This bloke said to me, he said, I feel obliged to carry your golf clubs. I said, you have got to be caddying. I'll tell you a great pick-me-up. A crane. I met this homeless secret agent. The name's Bond. Vagabond. Did you hear about the woman who poisoned her husband with antifreeze? Who was she married to? Frosty the Snowman? She should have just knocked his head off with a spade. A tortoise on a running machine. Imagine how slow you'd have to set it for him not to fly off the back. I used to be a vegetarian, but seeing 2 lambs playing together in a field put me right off it. I've got an Elvis address book. The trouble is, after I'd written Graceland in it, I couldn't think of any others. I was once caught stealing a horse. It was a fair clop. Apparently mobile phones give you cancer. Mind you, you've got to smoke about 20 a day. I like to dress up as Ray Davies and sing Waterloo Sunset. Bit kinky. Male cribs. They should be boycotted. Catmandu. Catwoman doesn't. Pentecost. That's the spirit. I tried to park at Cadbury's, but it was chock-a-block. So I said to this bloke, I said, I'm going to open a chain of opticians across Europe. He said, franchise? I said, franchise, English eyes, I don't care. So Pi R squared went round to a circle's house. He said, I was in the area. What do you call a little amphibian who never goes out? Hermit the Frog. I was working in a shop and a bloke walked in and started punching everyone. I said, can I help you? He said, it's all right, I'm just bruising. I once played cricket on the M25. I was out for BMW. Have you heard of that new style of cricket? The only way you can be out is by LBW, bowled or stumped. I know what you're thinking, where's the catch? Where does a dog go if his tail falls off? A retailer. For a long time, I thought Perth was where a woman with a lisp keeps her money. There used to be a band called Half Man, Half Biscuit, but they broke up. I think the greatest trick that David Copperfield ever did was getting Charles Dickens to write a book about him before he was born. Ian Botham has got a brother. I don't just like Ian, I like Botham. So I went to the insect barn dance. Take your partner by the thorax. I'm actually taking anti-barn dance pills. I'm not allowed to exceed the stated dosage. So I was in this folk club and the bloke next to me started humming. I said, "Can you change your shirt?" I went to the Royal Albert Hall and it was full of pushchairs. It was last night of the prams. The Royal Albert Hall is massive, and that's just the hall. You should see the size of the Royal Albert sitting room. I had a romance at the Highland Games. It was just a fling. I saw a film called A Bridge Too Far. The film before that, the whole cast drowned. It was called A Bridge Not Far Enough. My tortoise wrote a book. It was a hardback. I'm allergic to aspirin. If I take it, my head swells to 5 times its normal size. I take it all the time. My real head is the size of a walnut. This bloke told me to look at the top of some mountains, so I had a peek. I ran for Parliament once. I had to. I missed the bus. So I said to Neil Armstrong, I said, "Is it true the only man-made thing you could see from the moon was the Great Wall of China?" He said no. If I looked slightly to my left, I could see a rocket and a moon buggy. David Bowie, writes songs by taking unconnected words out of a hat. So Space Oddity could have started, "This is ground control to Flapjack Water Pistol." I've got an abacus made of polos on a piece of string. I use it to work out mental arithmetic. I saw this cardboard cutout in a baseball ground. It was the pitcher. Elton John has a piano in every room of his house. He's even got one in the toilet. But when you leave, you've got to remember to put the lid down. Elton John has a piano in every room of his house. He's even got one in the toilet, but when you leave, you've got to remember to put the lid down. I saw these bits of sheep around the top of a castle. It was the ramparts. Tim Vine Jokes 901 to 1001. Did you know Leo Sayer has a brother called Sooth? I went carol singing last year. I walked around lots of houses with a lantern and nobody gave me any money at all. Still, people are busy at Easter. My mum takes things literally. The other day I said I'd like a cup of tea. She said, "Shall I make a pot?" I said, "Yes, please." And she was gone for half an hour trying to heat up the kiln. The first colour TV transmission was not entirely successful. They were filming a zebra playing the piano on a giant chessboard. My dog gives me a great massage. Up a bit, down a bit, stay. I once toured Austria with a theatre company and the scenery was fantastic. We used to keep it in a horse box. So I went down the local bank. I said, "Can I make a withdrawal?" He said yes, so I walked out again. I see the US president is starring in a new ABBA musical. It's called Obama Mia. I once sang in a close harmony singing group. Very close. We used to practice in a phone booth. Cleopatra used to bathe in goat's milk. She once fell asleep in the jacuzzi and woke up in a tub of margarine. Radioactivity. Is that when your radio starts going out and doing stuff? There's a new TV show where you have to dress up as Russian kings. It's called Stars in Your Eyes. Radioactivity. Is that when your radio starts going out and doing stuff? If wine is plonk, does that mean wine tasters are plonkers? Radioactivity. Is that when your radio starts going out and doing stuff? Did you know plutonium is extracted from the saliva of Disney dogs? Radioactivity. Is that when your radio starts going out and doing stuff? The great train robbers stole £2.5 million. In fact, it was more than that because they didn't have any tickets. So I went to the hospital and I had an X-ray. The doctor went behind a screen and I heard some buzzing. I said, "Is it finished?" And he said, "No, I'm just having a shave." Sandals are called sandals because if you don't wear them on the beach, sand will get in between your toes. I made a stew out of a team of rugby players. It was scrummy. Last time I had a street party, I nearly died. I live on the M20. My sister lives in a pillar box. I don't see much of her. I used to leapfrog over pillar boxes. Last time I did, I broke my nose and 2 of my ribs because I tried to leapfrog one of those little square ones stuck to a wall. My telephone tells me if the host of Big Brother is trying to ring. It's got Davina McCall waiting. The Beatles did an Australian tour. John, Paul, George and Dingo. I did a gig in the Bastille, stormed it. Saint-Tropez has a topless beach. There's no sand on it. Frank Whittle invented the jet engine. A few years later he invented the hairdryer and blew his wife's head off. I went out with an MP from Blackpool. She was a stick of rock. What a lovely candidate. Bear meat is lovely, although it is a bit grisly. You know when you're tossing a pancake and it gets stuck to the ceiling? That happened to me once. I got stuck to the ceiling. So I said to this bloke, I was running away from a volcano and I tripped on a rock. He said, "Krakatoa?" I said, "No, but I twisted my ankle." Krakatoa? I asked Linford Christie to buy me some frozen peas and he took ages coming back. I said, "Where's that runner been?" I used to want to be a robber in Mexico, but they've banned it. I once danced the tango on an underwater shipwreck. Shoal, shoal, squid, squid, shoal. Nelson had 5 children, but only one of them was called Horatio. That's Horatio of 1 to 5. So I said to this bloke, I said, me and a friend just cycled across the desert with our legs exposed. He said, tandem? I said, we certainly did. So I went to the doctors. I said, I got hurt in a pillow fight. He said, you've got concussion. I saw this film about prehistoric pigs, Jurassic Pork. So I said to this bloke, I said, I bet you'd like to see where Dick Turpin lived. He said, sure would. I said, no, that's Robin Hood. Sure would. Ooh. In today's tombola, first prize is an Indian headdress, so we'll be raffling some feathers tonight. So I said to this bloke, I said, I bet you'd like to see where Dick Turpin lived. He said, sure would. I said, no, that's Robin Hood. They're terribly behaved in the House of Lords. It's not their fault, it's peer pressure. Dynamite was invented by Alfred Nobel. At first he didn't have a name for it, then it blew his house up and he said, this stuff's dynamite. I went to a drive-in movie. I didn't see much. There was a bloke in the front row in a combine harvester. The last book I read was an encyclopedia. I don't know what you're thinking. That explains everything. Oh, I read it wrong. If you've got a rabbit, it's very bad to carry them around by their ears. It makes them lazy. The last book I read was an encyclopedia. I know what you're thinking. That explains everything. They say all the world's a stage, so how come we're not all facing the same way? Champagne makes you dizzy, but it's cheaper to run in circles. Cher had 2 ribs removed to make her look thinner. She said, I'm not eating those, take them away. People want to swim with dolphins because it's a unique experience. But it's not as unique as white water rafting with a duck-billed platypus. I miss Genghis. So I went to the pet shop and I said, how much is that doggy in the window? He said, the one with the waggly tail? I said, no, the one next to it. This bloke said to me, he said, do you like fencing? I said, sort of. So I went to the pet shop and I said, how much is that doggy in the window? He said, the one with the waggly tail? I said, nope, the one next to it. And this bloke next to me, he said, do you like fencing? I said, sort of. I tried playing the piano with a broken foot, but I couldn't sustain it. This bloke said to me, he said, I'm mute. I thought that goes without saying. I can speak Swahilian. It's like Swahili, but a bit higher. Coffee. It's not my cup of tea. This weatherman walked up to me holding a huge ridge of low pressure. He had some front. Molecules, atoms, protons, neutrons. I'm rubbish at small talk. My favourite Russian song is Crimea River. So I said to this bloke, I said, a bird like a swallow just flew past. He said, swift. I said, like the clappers. I've got a friend, and all he ever wants to do is dress up as a small black insect and live under a rock. He's just a bit anti. Censorship makes me so bleeping angry. The school I went to was a picture made of coloured paper and seashells stuck on with glue. It was a sixth form collage. After I left university, I removed one of my front teeth for 12 months. It was my gap year. When I was born, my mum lit a stick of dynamite and put it in my mouth. I was part of the baby boom. I'm glad I wasn't a fly on the wall when they invented fly spray. I went to a tug-of-war competition and I pulled. Tweet, tweet, tweet. A little bird told me that. So I woke up in the jungle and I was covered in bites. Those tigers. This bloke said to me, he said, I'm going to blindfold you, spin you round in circles, and leave you in a field 50 miles away. I said, you've lost me there. So I was up all night wondering what happened to the sun, and suddenly it dawned on me. The other day I played golf with a female dog. It was a bitch and putt. Whenever I cry, little wooden huts drop out of my eyes. A lot of tears have been shed. A friend of mine killed himself in the desert. He was a kamikaze. So I went to the doctors. I said, I've got a pain in my stomach and I think I'm a small wading bird. He said, you've got acute appendicitis. Acute appendicitis. I said, I can hear music at the base of my spine. He said, you've got slipped disco. I said, I always put an S on the end of words. He said, you've pluralcy. I hate it when people stand on things to make them look taller. I really think people shouldn't do that. Alright, I'll get off my soapbox now. I've just eaten an abacus. I've always said it's what's inside that counts. I've planted a redwood in Buckingham Palace Garden and I was arrested for high treason. I've got a friend who's a pointless beam of light. Laser good for nothing. I had a polio injection the other day and I can't even ride a horse. I went to a nightclub during the day and there was no one there. Why do you never see an elephant on a bus? Because he's got a massive bum. I've got a friend who's a pointless beam of light. Laser good for nothing. I forced Mike Tyson to do bell ringing at my church. I said, I've got you on the ropes now, haven't I? I went to bed with a grindstone. The next day I got out of bed sharpish. Yesterday I fired my cleaner. I'm glad that's done and dusted. I went to a party in a pendulum. When I got there it was already in full swing. It's amazing how many poems have been written by a nun. Oh, it's a non, is it? Infinity, forever, eternal, immortal. The list is endless. I'm terrible at line dancing. I keep going off the page. My house has just been infested by an Italian sauce, so I rang up pesto control. I've got an eating disorder. I go coffee first, then pudding, then main course. I finally got on the property ladder. I'm a window cleaner. What goes around comes around. Look at swing ball. So I jumped over a bottle of whiskey on one leg. Hopscotch. Cliff Richard said, if it wasn't for Elvis Presley, there would never have been Cliff Richard. But I don't think you can blame Elvis for that. This bloke said to me, he said, have you ever had a nosebleed in an unusual place? I said, no, it's always in my nose. I got attacked by a lumberjack from Warsaw. I was pole-axed. The other day, a tornado hit my local fair. It was a cruel twist of fate. Did you know Steve the Gingerbread Man has just been voted London's most edible bachelor. Someone threw Chinese soup at me. It was wanton violence. I had a haircut at Christmas. All the trimmings. Cliff Richard said if it wasn't for Elvis Presley there would never have been Cliff Richard, but I don't think you can blame Elvis for that. This bloke said to me, he said, have you ever had a nosebleed in an unusual place? I said, no, it's always my nose. Page 310. Tim Vine Live Puddin Slinger DVD. Reward Yourself. Coming autumn 2010. Acknowledgements. Thanks for extra contributions go to John Archer, Carl Hampson, Sonia Vine, James Stewart, Mark Kelly, Graham Noon, Michael Sell, Dawn Booth and Roy Grindrod. To each I award the Gold Star of Pun Writing, and thanks also to Tim Payne for this and everything else. The biggest ever Tim Vine joke book, over 1,000 puntastic gags. In time for Valentine's Day, hopefully. The biggest ever Tim Vine joke book. Page 59 we've got. I met a leech who was buying a Valentine's card. He was a sucker for it.